Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday, September the 29th. Boy, time just keeps trucking along and changes keep happening. And that's why I have my friend Bharon Hoag with me today. Bharon, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, and if you all didn't catch our Instagram live interview last week, it was amazing. Thanks to all of you who've reached out and said, thank you so much for bringing forth truth. And I got to give it all up to this guy because I just literally asked the questions and he filled in the blanks and gave us information so that we can be empowered. Before we jump in today, I just want to do some couple of shout outs to some chiropractors here in Alaska. Dr. Jennifer Lovedell, Doctors Jessica and Ryan Dahusky went and gave testimony 2 weeks ago. Yeah, almost 2 weeks ago, about a mask mandate. And Ryan received like a standing ovation for his literacy on the topic of not just speaking like gossip, but like brought forth tons of research. And so now yesterday, that was able to be pulled through again because our stupid assembly here in Anchorage thinks it's a great idea to mask us all. And I just am so proud of the chiropractors here, and just shout out to Dr. Stacy Lowe out in Wasilla, Alaska as well for fighting the good fight and being willing to take a stand as well. And shout out to our mayor, Dave Bronson. We're praying for you, and thank you so much for standing in this tumultuous gap. So we got stuff going on in Rhode Island right now, in New York. So give us the goods, Bharon. What's up?
Yeah, so we have been very successful at navigating most of the chiropractors across the country. Right now, there are states that, and DC is one of those, which isn't a state, but that have mandates that affect chiropractors. And we've successfully navigated them in all of the states. But Rhode Island has removed out of their mandate the religious exemption, and which is a big deal. So we didn't really have a choice. We hired and retained an attorney. We filed a complaint against that we believe it's violating Title VII of the First Amendment, which clearly states that, in our country, you are allowed to have a religious exemption. And obviously the courts have been very, very resistant to doing anything to go against any of the executive orders or the powers of the governors at this time, because it's in a state of emergency because of this supposed pandemic. So, we filed that. As a matter of fact, literally right before why we're speaking, that court case is going on. I was listening to that before I jumped on here. And as we would expect, we fully expect that we're not going to get it through in this particular court. We're going to have to appeal and go to a higher level of court. That's the only time that we've seen any of these types of motions actually going into effect, is when it goes to the higher courts, where you're out of kind of the lower level that are just going to toe the party a line because they were appointed by the governor and all of that stuff. So it's not, we're expecting it. It's very frustrating to sit and listen to the arguments of the state, and to listen to the judges as they're challenging that there's no precedent for religious exemptions, when it's pretty black and white, in our opinion, and has been, across our country since 1964, when that was put into place. So anyway, so we're fighting it there. That's our first actual litigation that we've had to get into as the CDC, the Chiropractic Defense Council. We've been able to navigate that in other manners across the other states. So we're gonna keep fighting it. That we're in a very unique place this week, because next week is when most of the mandates go into effect, October 1st, for most of the country. And so it's really, what's happening.
Hey, Bharon, I don't know if you can hear me, but you just froze. So it may be appropriate to maybe sign back in, because you're still frozen. So I'm going to take a picture and show you what's happening on this end. Actually, I love it when when this kind of stuff happens, so that all of you can see that stuff happens. Like, um, when you do Facebook Lives, and anytime you're doing something with technology, especially as it relates to having to use the internet, stuff can go wrong. But that's okay. Like, all of you accepted, and Bharon will be joining us back here in just a minute. If you do have a question, please feel free to put it in the comment section, and I'll make sure that we address it. And or if it's something that you're concerned about it being out there with your name, you're welcome to send me a Facebook private message, and I will read it, and then your name can remain anonymous. I understand that there's a lot of connections that happen.
Hello.
There we go. Let's try this again.
I'm telling you what, man, whenever this happens, I'm like, okay, I just got targeted, man. They're coming after me. So, I don't know. It's crazy. So I apologize.
No problem. And Patty Platts Bricky said, "Stay strong. Thanks for all your hard work." And I agree. So can we just like speed bump here for just a second? Can you give those of us who haven't read every detail of the religious exemption, what does it say? I heard something yesterday that that hospitals, and I'm assuming it maybe applies to other businesses as well. If you used a religious exemption, they will accept it now, but they're going to go back and look at, is it a legitimate religious exemption?
So there's no standard way. So if you look at the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and you look at the First Amendment, or the ADA, the American Disability Act, there's a number of places in our Constitution that it talks about religious exemptions and how it's defined. In the federal side of this, most states don't clearly define what they mean by it. They just say that there's a religious exemption. And so what happens is everyone starts immediately thinking, well, that means I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm a Catholic, or I'm a Hindu, or a Buddhist, or whatever. And we associate it to a religion that is organized. And then we have to go and figure out, does that really mean that this particular issue violates your religious belief with that organized religion? That's not what the Civil Rights Act says. That is also not what the ADA says, or Title VII in the First Amendment. What it says is that it's a strongly held belief, that it's a belief system that you operate by in your life, and that you can prove that this is a decision that we've made not only because of this issue, but because of previous situations. So let's just keep this to the chiropractic side. We can clearly show it's a strongly held belief for us not to do vaccinations, not to do forced medical at all, because of the entire inherent principles of chiropractic. Even though we have some in our profession that would love to jab people all day long, historically, our profession is a drug-free, surgery-free, natural form of health. We believe the healing comes from the inside out, not the outside in. And so we've got documents all the way back to 1895 that express that that's the inherent principle. So for us to say it's a strongly held belief, that's a legitimate. That's not just a scapegoat to get out of something. I mean, there are literally chiros shutting their clinics down, moving out of state, going to other states where they're not going to have to worry about this because of how strongly held that belief system is, right? So what we're finding in the employer market, and this is an important thing that people need to understand about the mandates. There's a lot of flaws in the strategy that whoever is behind this massive movement to inoculate our entire world is missing. They don't really have the infrastructure. There is no government agency that has the capability to, number one, enforce, or number two, regulate this particular mandate. So they're leaving it to the employers. All of the mandates are saying, you employer, you're responsible for collecting the vaccination records, collecting the religious exemptions, collecting the medical exemptions, and making sure that those are valid exemptions, right? So it leaves it to the actual employer, and there are no guidelines provided by the state on what an actual accepted medical or an accepted religious is. They're just threatening them with $300 a day fine if you have employees that aren't doing it. They're threatening with potential removing licensures, getting under issues of licensing boards, and physicians potentially losing their license. There's a lot of propaganda about fear. So it's happening depending on the employer. they're the ones that are making all of these ridiculous, inconsistent rules. So to your immediate question of, well, they'll accept a religious exemption, but then they're going to go and try to look and validate. What most large employers have been doing are creating committees that review the exemptions that are submitted for the validity of them. And it's literally just whatever they want to do. There's no system to it. It's just the people in that committee. If they're like, oh, we don't like Susan. Susan's really not a Christian. We saw her drinking at the bar the other night. So nope, we're denying that religious exemption because there's no way she's religious. There's no criteria that anyone can use because there's no criteria that exists. It just simply says a strongly held belief. Now, that's the problem in the big sector. That's the problem if we have chiropractors that work in hospitals or if we have chiropractors that work in certified federal facilities. Those are problems, right? And unfortunately, the only thing I can say is fill it. If they deny it, then we need to follow a legal process to get that done. But for 98% of chiropractors, we are the employers. So we are the ones that get to make the decision on if we accept them, if we don't. And clearly we would accept them. So that's how we've been able to navigate. That's why we've released a step-by-step process. It's a compliance process to make sure you're compliant with the mandate, which in all states except for Rhode Island, we can keep chiropractors compliant. They don't have to fear. They still maintain their right to choose for them and their staff. And it's a system that we can back legally if anyone ever challenges you. So we don't believe this is as scary as everyone is thinking it is for the states that, have and are accepting religious exemptions, which is every state but Rhode Island at this point. Maine is not accepting them either, but chiropractors are not underneath the mandate in Maine. They're not underneath the mandate in New York. They're not underneath the mandate in New Jersey. They're not underneath the mandate in California. So we have other states that have mandates, but chiropractors are excluded from that. They're only doing it for emergency care centers, nursing homes, what they consider emergency medical personnel. And we are not considered emergency medical personnel. We are considered essential, but not emergency. So that's why in those states, we don't fall underneath those particular mandates. But we do in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Puerto Rico, Illinois, Rhode Island, right? So those are states that we do fall underneath. And those are the ones that we've been working in, and we have legal counsel. And again, in Rhode Island, we're still encouraging. If you're someone that's watching this and you're from Rhode Island, I know it's scary. This goes into effect on Friday. We are strongly recommending you go through the religious exemption process as we've laid out, even though your state has stated that they're not, because we have a case that's really in the courts right now. We will be appealing the decision. There is legal precedent that you can follow that and say, listen, the courts have not ruled whether this exemption is acceptable or not. So it buys us some time, right? It keeps you compliant, if you will, because there is a legal case in the courts in Rhode Island, which says until there's a final decision on that and until it goes all the way to the Supreme Court and it is denied, we have a reason to believe that the religious exemption is a viable option for those. And so we are encouraging doctors to continue to practice, continue to show up. And I want to say this very closely. I get it's easy for me to say this. I've had so many conversations with chiropractors, but I need you to understand that I live this every single day. I am doing this in every country. I'm in Canada, I'm in Australia, I'm in New Zealand, I'm in the United States. This is all I'm doing every day is fighting these mandates. I hear the stories every single day. I know the fear is real. I own clinics. I know what it's like when mandates come down. We didn't wear masks, and I had the threat every single day if the health department was going to come and try to shut us down. I really do understand the fear that's behind this. But I also know who my savior is. I also know how the story ends. I also know that truth does prevail, and that our profession, this is not the first time that we've been in threat of being thrown in jail for showing up to do what we do. Historically, we had people that stood up and said, I don't care, I'm still going to work. I'm asking you to have some confidence and faith that the truth is going to prevail. I don't want you to shut your doors. I don't want you to live in fear. I don't want you to lose the revenue that you need to provide for your family. We are fighting on your behalf. We have legal counsel. We're in court today. We're going to keep pushing this thing. I can't predict what the next few days are going to look like or the next few months, but I can tell you we will never stop fighting to protect the rights of chiropractors. And we have to band together. We need to understand the rules. We need to be very strategic. We need to be very clear and directive oriented when we're doing this, but we need to continue to move forward. The government cannot stop us from telling the story of truth that we tell every day in our practices. So again, I get it. I understand the fear. I understand that, but I'm asking you to choose belief more than fear and continue to provide the services. And if anyone comes knocking on your door and starts challenging you and you provide them the religious exemption and they tell you that isn't going to work, reach out to me directly. Our counsel will represent you. So I need you to know that's why we built the Chiropractic Defense Council, was to make sure that they couldn't pick us off one at a time like they've done historically. We are going to defend this profession. We are going to make sure that our truth is told. And I believe with everything I am that we will win this when it's over.
Love that. And Christy and I went to Logan together. She asked, where can we see the religious exemption sheet? And so all of you go to defendchiropractic.org. Please, like it's $33 a month. Like we're just asking that you start there. I would love to see all of you become a founder. It's $1,895. It's like, come on. Other than maybe students, and even students probably could find the resources to do that. But you know, it's like a lot of other things in our lives. We don't appreciate it until we really need it. Mm-hmm. And I believe that being under the umbrella of CDC, not America's CDC, but this CDC, just gives you that confidence to stand firm, to stand, to stand in the fray, to stand there for your practice members as well. When all of this, like I just see it as the Bible talks about the wagging tongue, right? Mm-hmm. Like, be careful of that tongue. And I see in Facebook groups that, somebody from Colorado gets all fired up and jumps into a Facebook group, and then everybody's skirt gets blown up because we think that somebody else has the truth and we don't. Well, this is the truth. Like, go to the chiropracticdefense.org and you will find out, like, how many of you actually even knew anything was going on in Rhode Island this morning? I didn't until Bharon and I just before we went live. And so this is where the truth comes out. And remember that threats don't equal law.
That's right. That's right.
Threats are not law, but they sure want to get us all fired up and all going and rolling up our sleeves and putting on our masks and all of that kind of stuff. So,
and that's really what we're finding right now. And I want to be clear, those that are tied to us and that become contributors, every Monday I shoot a video giving you an update of everything going on in the United States. I do. If you're in Canada, this is Facebook, so who knows if we have people from different countries. So we're operating in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. And so I record a video for each country every Monday, giving them updates on where we're at, what we're doing, what's happening, giving clear direction if there's things that they need to be doing at that moment. So anyone that's tied to us, one of our commitments is communication, making sure that people are aware. We're trying to streamline it, not create confusion, but create clarity in what we're doing. But to your point that you were ending there, to as of right now, it's all been propaganda. There has not been to do it. And so we do believe that part of their strategy is just to use propaganda and fear, knowing full well they don't have the legal ability to actually force someone to do this. They're just seeing if they can get the employers to do their dirty work. Remember, to point, it's not been the state doing it. It's been the employers under fear of getting fined, but no one's been fined. Nothing's happened yet. It's just been all of this ruckus, right? And the same thing even with Biden and his, press conference and his executive order, it's still just a lot of propaganda. He's throwing it to different departments saying, you fix it, you figure it out, you do it. And CMS has not really reported on it yet. The Department of Labor has not really reported on it yet. So there's just a lot of quagmire that's going on, and that confusion is what creates fear. And they know that. And that's why this is happening. So part of what we're trying to do is give a little bit of confidence that we have at least someone that's got the experts. We have 9 attorneys in the United States. Some of the best attorneys in the country on these issues are on retainer with us. And I talk to them every day and to some degree. We're strategizing. We're looking at big strategy. We're looking at immediate issues. So that you don't have to do that. You just got to stay plugged in and then look out for your video every Monday so that you're knowledgeable about what's going on. And when you get fearful or you hear something, send it to me. Half of the knowledge I have is because doctors all over the world are saying, Bharon, did you know this? Bharon, did you know this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Thank you. Because I can't be everywhere all the time. But the beauty of our vision of creating a network of 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 chiropractors under one roof is that we have eyes, ears, and there's a trust factor with us because we're not a political organization. We're an organization that's driven at protecting the rights of practicing chiropractors. And so all the Hatfield and McCoy garbage that happens between ICA, ACA, and any other association, multiple associations in the state, we need to rise above all of that. I'm not saying there's not merit to some of that stuff. I'm just saying I don't care about it anymore. This is beyond all of that. This is bigger than that. I don't even care. I have my belief of what chiropractic is. I have my belief on how we should move forward as a profession. But right now in this issue, I don't care how you practice. I don't care if you do want drugs in your practice. Right now, I need you coming on board, and we need to work together, because if we don't fix this, you're not going to have the right to do that anyway.
Yeah.
So we have to get beyond this tyrannical government that's happening. And I do believe chiropractic has a key role in this issue. We have an ability to rise in our authority within healthcare as a whole, because what we've been saying for 125 years is manifesting right now, and people are seeing it. I get conversations with other specialties all the time saying, man, you guys were right. Like, we thought you guys were just like weirdos, but you guys were right. Right. So we're starting to get a lot of credibility in the healthcare sector. And this is the funniest part. And I got to say this because you've dealt with chiropractors. You have a consulting group. You know how hard it is to organize and to get people to pull from the same end of the rope. I can't tell you how many times I'm dealing with attorneys and large advocate groups saying, man, you chiropractors are so organized. And I literally have to stop myself from choking, because I'm like, if you only knew how unorganized our profession is.
Yeah.
But we're starting to build something that no one else is building. And it's because we're all on the same page with this issue. Like, this singular issue of choice, for the most part. We have 10% of our profession that's like, I think I get, emails and texts and Facebook, people using fake names, and, they don't have the kahunas to tell me their real name to have an honest conversation. But they'll be like, great job making chiropractic look like a bunch of jerks. And, so we have our percentage, but I'm going to argue 85 to 90% of our profession would agree in choice that we should not be forced to do anything. And so we singularly agree on this issue. And that allows us to come together where other professions and specialties don't have that unification around the purpose. So this is why it's a unique opportunity for us to rise and lead in this forefront. And then when the dust settles, people are going to be looking at us saying, man, the chiropractors really carried a heavy lift on that issue. Maybe we need to start looking at them a bit differently, right? So I see all of this as an unbelievable opportunity. I don't move forward in fear. I move forward in belief. I move forward knowing how the story ends. And so I just look with excitement to see what God's going to do, what opportunities are going to be presented. And I'm just blessed and beyond honored to be a part of it and to serve the small role that I'm serving in it. In the big picture, but we have to continue to come together. That's why our contribution structure is what it is. We're not asking people for a bunch of money. For those that can't afford the one-time payment of $18.95 and then $33 a month, that's awesome. That really helps us right now as we're retaining attorneys all over the world. And it's definitely, we're spending a lot of money for sure. But our goal is to get thousands of people to give $33, right? Everyone can afford that. You're a part of it. It keeps you connected to a tribe that's communicating with you regularly. You feel like you have some kind of coverage over you. And that was our structure. Our structure is to bring the profession together, not just to raise money. If I wanted to raise money, I'd be doing it differently. I mean, I need to raise money, but my big goal is to bring people together. That's the whole structure of what we've been trying to do since we started in 2016. But this cause has elevated, and our work with the Defense Council has elevated the awareness of our profession, of who we are and what we're doing. And so I'm hoping, and it's working. We're close to 2,000 contributors right now, which, is amazing. Believe it or not, that makes us one of the larger groups in the profession, sadly enough. And, so when we get to our goal of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people, it will be the largest organized group in the profession. But it's because we're not trying to push agendas. We're trying to defend, and we're trying to communicate, and we're trying to create a safe space for people to be able to have a conversation. And together we will ensure that if anyone comes after us, chiropractic is no longer the low-hanging fruit. They will not be able to just tyrannically come at us anymore, because we're no longer segmented. We now have the revenue. We have the people. We have the knowledge. We've always had the truth. Now we are organized in a fashion that, no, I dare you. One of our slogans is "Don't tread on me." Like, that's our attitude. We have swagger. Like, enough's enough. We are going to kick the hell out of anyone that comes at us anymore. We will have the O.J. Simpson defense team. Like, I mean, the glove didn't fit. Let's acquit. Like, we are going to go after anyone that comes after us, because we have the ability to now, because we're organized, and we're getting more organized every day.
And I think it's so important to two things that I want to address that you brought up, and that is, oh, well, it's easy for the two of you to be on camera and saying it's hard because you're not in practice. And I want to just bring that to, like, even the Bible says, like, the church has many parts, right? Like, your practice, even your family has many parts. If we're all doing the same thing, then some of us are irrelevant then. So those of you who are in practice, thank you for being there and
That's right.
serving.
That's right.
Bharon, thank you for the role you're serving, the role that I'm serving. If we were all doing the same thing, we're not going to be able to move forward together.
Right.
So I love getting the idea of, in tug of war, we're going to beat the opposition if we're all on the same end of the rope and pulling. So thanks to all of you who are in practice.
That's
thanks
right.
to Bharon, and thanks to others who I know are doing the same thing as I am, of moving the message out. So that's number one. Number two, for those of you who are watching right now, don't put this off going to defendchiropractic.org. Like, click on it and give. It's $33 a month. Like, that's all. And maybe you think, well, I don't agree with you guys on everything. Hey, you know what? You don't agree with your own thoughts on a daily basis.
Right.
You don't agree with the person that you're sleeping with every day as well. But can we just agree that we have rights that need to be defended? That's all that we're asking you to agree upon, not anything else. And to look back that our chiropractic message has been the same since 1895. Like, can you really see, even in the medical profession, that they've agreed upon anything since 1895? Like, do they have principles that they've agreed upon? No, they don't. So we're just simply asking, can we simply unify under this one thing, that we have the right to choose? That's all we're asking. And if you agree with that, whether you're a chiropractor or not, you can go to defendchiropractic.org, because we are working to set precedent. We are working to set precedent that, yes, applies to chiropractors, but then sets a precedent. Like, if you understand law at all, it then can be brought into the courtroom in other situations as well. So this isn't really truly just a chiropractic issue. This is a freedom issue.
That's right.
And that's really what this is about, is our right as a human to choose what is best for my body, what is best for your body. And then as parents, the right to choose. So if you think that, oh, well, we're going to get through this, like, could you please just look into the eyes of your children and your grandchildren and know that the fight that we do today drastically impacts them. Like, we're leaving them with a massive debt. Can we at least leave them with the freedom to be able to work?
Right. Yeah. And your words are so true. And, although our work is specifically committed to chiropractic, but you're right, the work we're doing can help other people, and we are sharing it. We're just not using our resources, because I want to be true to the people that are contributing, that their dollars are being used for them. And I'm not off chasing other issues and bleeding resources that we might need someday. But it's still very, very pertinent to what's going on in the issue, because we're all facing the same thing, right? We're all facing the right to choose. So it's been amazing. I mean, we're networking with all kinds of groups, with Stand for Health Freedom, Make Americans Free Again, Canadian Rights Watch, Victoria Free Us. These are organizations around the world that we're connecting with as well, to share what they're learning and to share what we're learning, and to come up with a global strategy of how to eradicate the tyrannical behavior that's happening. And there is strength. It's happening every single day. There's new information coming out that's putting even more cracks in the narrative that's being put out there. So I feel very optimistic. I'm not saying we don't have some rough roads ahead of us. The Bible's very clear. We're going to be having issues until Christ comes back. So I'm in no way thinking that it's won and we get to relax. But I think there's some hope. I think there's, we're coming together. They're pushing people together that have never come together before. And there's strength in the truth, and the truth is starting to prevail. So don't give up hope. If you're watching this, I don't know where you're at in this process. I don't know what state you're in. I don't know how scared or not scared or whatever you are, but don't give up hope. Hope is the most powerful weapon there is against fear. If you have hope, if you just believe that there's going to be a better day, that's ultimately what gets us, to where we need to go. So, and we're honored to play the role that we're playing, and we're going to keep doing it.
So can I, something I've been asked, and I don't know the answer to it, but, as I guess as Christians especially, and as those who believe in the sanctity of life, this right to choose that, has led those who are pro-choice, which pro-choice just means you're pro-abortion, like their arguments. How is it that those aren't just easily being applied here of our right to choose?
So here's the frustration with logic right now. Logic doesn't apply because that's a logical argument, right? Like, wait a minute, because someone, I heard someone, I think there was a rapper that did a song and he was like, so you're telling me there's microscopic life on Mars and you're calling that life on Mars because it's some microscopic thing, but then a fetus isn't considered life, right? So logic doesn't apply with
Okay.
arguments that are based in lies, right? And so the difficulty we have with today's issue is because this is considered a pandemic, because it's a pandemic, it gives, and it's called a state of emergency, it gives powers to governors and departments of health that just bypass all of our normal legal systems. All of the things that we would typically use to defend our rights from someone just waking up with the wrong side of the bed one day and making some rule. That's why we have a House, a Senate, an executive, a legislative branch. We have the judicial branch, those are there to stop our world from going in a direction of just an individual, unless you're in a state of emergency, unless the fate of humanity is what it is. So that happens when we have massive weather and hurricanes. You can determine a state of emergency. Funds are released without going through Congress. You can get emergency orders done. And that all makes sense when, New Orleans is underwater after a massive hurricane. But that's exactly what they're saying this pandemic is. And the issue that we've had with this the whole time is, how do you have a pandemic with a disease that has over 99% survival rate for every demographic other than one, which is 70 plus with comorbidities? And even that's still in the 90s. It's just not 99%, right? So how is it a pandemic? None of this matters. They've literally used a strategy across the world to give authority to individuals because of the classification of what's going on. So this is why people are constantly emailing me, giving me resources saying, well, Bharon, here's the facts about the vaccine. Here's the facts about what happens here. And I love all that information, but none of it matters because we're under an executive order that's considered a state of emergency. And so they're not hearing it. It's for the betterment of the world. Now, some of the cases that are being filed right now are chipping away at that. Part of our strategy in Australia is to actually go with the science, because to date that I'm aware of, whenever this has been challenged on a federal level or a high court level, depending on the country you're in, it is yet to uphold the scrutiny to prove that it's a pandemic. Because to be called a pandemic, there's a checklist of things that have to be there in order for it to qualify because of the authority that it gives, right? You can't just say someone has the sniffles and be like, oh, it's a pandemic, right? There has to be, at least in theory, there has to be these check marks. So the only place that it's been challenged in the high courts is Alberta, Canada, and they were successful at removing the title of pandemic in that province because they couldn't win. And so that's a strategy we're looking at in other parts of the world. How do we get the argument away from the executive authority, away from the mandates, and go right at the pandemic itself? And say, okay, let's just put it through the proper legal channels to prove that it meets the definition of a pandemic. And to my knowledge, that's yet to happen because, and the reason people are like, well, why, if that's a great idea, why isn't that happening? Because they haven't enforced anything yet, right? I mean, this is all propaganda. You're hearing things. The only people that are enforcing it.
Smart people who truly believe that this vaccine is going to make them healthy.
Oh, yeah.
It's
a deep-rooted belief. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Because they've been conditioned over time to trust government agencies, to trust their doctor, and their doctors trust their medical associations, and there's no critical thinking anymore in healthcare. That's why we've always been ostracized. It's like, this is what I was taught in school. It says if it has this diagnosis, I follow this chart, which, by the way, was created by the pharmaceutical company to go through the differentially diagnosing process. And if you have this diagnosis, here's the evidence base that says this is how you treat it, right? There's no critical thought anymore. It's all about following the guidelines that I'm given so that I CYA, that I don't lose my license. I don't have my patients mad at me. I mean, you interview the MDs, they will tell you they knew opioids weren't working, but the patients wanted them so bad. If they didn't give them, they'd get a bad rating and they would lose their job at the hospital because their patients were unhappy with their treatment. Like I sat in opioid crisis meetings in the state of Ohio where the hospital association said our docs will not stop giving it because they will lose their job because of dissatisfaction in patient care because the patients demand it. So the system is so broken in the allopathic world that it isn't about critical thinking. It's not about health. It's all about profit and covering my ass. I mean, that's it. That's literally where the bubble shifts is how do we make money without losing our ability to do what we're doing? If we can provide great healthcare, awesome. If not, we've perpetuated a model that'll keep funding our initiatives. And so that's why chiropractic is so vital right now and why it's so important. We keep doing what we're doing. We don't let this fear shut us down. We're one of the few voices in the world right now that are standing up and saying, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. The viruses do not do what they're saying this virus is doing. That's just science, right? You guys want to say peer reviewed and evidence-based. I'll give you evidence-based. It is not possible for this virus to mutate and create these variants naturally. It just doesn't happen. That's not how that works. And so,
let's go back to biology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know what's so interesting to me as well is even this idea of peer review. Well, let's look at who are the peers that are reviewing. Oh, wait, there's stockholders? Of course they're objective. No. So please, like, if you're trusting science, it's not just what's on the page, but like, do your due diligence and like do a little bit of digging of where did it come from? In case you don't know, like when we graduated from chiro school, we had to do our thesis kind of thing. And I did it on, well, what is the FDA? And I was shocked to know that the FDA basically just collects information. So if you're a pharmaceutical, like if you want to get this drug passed, then you give me your research. Boy, that sounds super objective because there's no way.
And we just get to determine if we think the research you did was viable or not, but it's still a very subjective process.
Yeah. I mean, and you can put whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right. Especially when.
Well, Pfizer just did it with the booster. They denied the booster initially. Then they went back and they tweaked a couple of things, brought it back, and they approved it. Like this just happened a week ago. And it's such a subjective process. And there's so many stakeholders that sit in those meetings that have conflict of interest that no one ever says anything about. And, they're like, hey, if you just tweak this one or two things, I think we can get the votes. They tweak the one or two things and they get the vote.
Yes. Yeah. So please, everyone, just like, number one, like join defendchiropractic.org. That's number one. Number two, share this interview. Like, I understand all of you probably don't want to go on air and have your name assigned to all of this. That's fine. But you can at least share this, even if you just take the link and throw it in Facebook Messenger, or you take this link and send it out through your text groups and your text threads to your family group. Every single family has a family thread, right? Like, just put this there, like through your email. Will you please do that one step? Share it with your practice members and let them make a decision that's right for them. And I understand, like, hey, Barb, hey, Bharon, you don't get it when our practice members are coming in and basically saying, are you going to get vaccinated? If not, then I'm leaving. Maybe
I get it. I have clinics. I deal with it every day. I get it.
Just give them the opportunity. And I think the reason that conversation is coming up, because I deal with it too, even though I'm not in active practice, the reason it's coming up is they know you're going to have a different viewpoint and they want to hear it. Like, they're just hoping you'll be able to say something that makes them go, I knew it. I knew I made the right decision in not getting the jab. I knew it. Thank you. Yep. Like, what if that's the lens that you look through instead of fearing that they're going to take off? What if the lens is they're just hoping, like, will you please just say something?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if we want to look at universal truths, I mean, Simon Sinek teaches people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the goal is not to do business with everyone that needs your product or service, but it's to do business with people that believe what you believe. And if we want to continue to struggle in practice, if we want to continue to hate a certain percentage of our patient base because they drive us insane, then start saying what you believe and repel those people, right? With every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? We know that's a universal truth, but people forget the last half of that equal and opposite reaction, which means if I say something out of love, if I say something out of truth, out of my core of believing, and I repel 10 people, that universal truth tells me that I also attract 10 people, because with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, if I'm functioning from hate or fear or lies or selfishness or greed, that law doesn't apply. But it does apply when I'm functioning in truth. So if I'm believing and I lose 10 patients because I say I hate abortion, or I am not into vaccines, or I do not believe in this pandemic, and you lose 10 people, or I refuse to wear a mask, or I refuse to do whatever the government's telling me to do, and you lose 10 people, that means you're going to attract 10 people. And why is it that as humans, we focus on the people we lost rather than be excited about the people that we're attracting? Right? Who doesn't want to be around people that believe what you believe? It's a much easier and fun and powerful environment than constantly being in conflict.
And maybe let's just even take it a step further. We can't lose that which we don't own.
There
we
you
don't
go.
Own our practice members. Like,
that's right.
They're under free will to come and go from our practice as
Great point.
please. And we are also under free will to love and accept and serve them. Like,
that's right.
Again, this idea of we have to agree in order to move forward together. That is not true. That is not true. Like, I mean, think how many of us even said, I do, or like, I do for our first date. And you didn't have a clue where that person stood, but you still took the time to move forward. Like the restaurant owner that you just went to their restaurant this last week. Do you agree with everything that they stand for? You don't even know what they stand for, probably.
Right.
But there's something so very powerful. Last week, actually, it was interesting. My COO, Myra, and I were in a meeting, and the person was like, you should maybe just tone down your message a little bit. And we're both like,
I get that a lot. Yeah.
Who you're talking to. And Myra piped up and she's like, that ain't going to happen.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I don't know.
As a matter of fact, you're going to cause me to go a little louder because apparently it's working. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, Bharon and I aren't on here to ruffle feathers at all. We're here to let you know you are not alone.
That's right.
That's why we're doing this, to let you know you are not alone. There's a source of truth. There's an army fighting for you, but we need you to join the army. I cannot say it enough. defendchiropractic.org. Do your part. You're doing your part in practice, or you're doing your part in sharing truth. Somebody asked, I want to make sure I address these. What about ADA laws? And I'm pretty confident, Bharon, like you touched on that at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But can you just hit it again real quickly?
Yeah. So that's Title VII. So we have ADA, we have the Civil Rights Act, and then obviously the First Amendment. So those are what we're standing on, even in the case that we're fighting right now in Rhode Island. They're all based on that truth. And so we 100% agree that they give us civil liberties. They give us religious exemption rights, but they're trying to take them away. And that's the fight that we're in right now. We're very confident we'll win if we can get it to the higher courts. We're probably going to lose in the lower courts because, again, of the tyrannical, governor and in the states, and especially in the New England states. It's a very liberal world up there, and they're very much buying into everything that's being said. So the lower courts, you have people that are a bit more opinionated than literally just legal. When you start moving yourself up to the higher courts, it becomes way more about the law. So we're very confident, and there is precedent around ADA, around the Civil Rights Act, around the First Amendment. So yes, you're 100% right. There is relief there for us.
Awesome. And then the last question was, what's the best way to approach an employer asking and mandating? I mean, I'm going to say this, like, number one, join defendchiropractic.org so that, no, seriously, like, it's on. My husband and I last night, we don't watch the news very often, but we wanted to watch the Mike Lindell. Anyone that is associated with him, thank you. Mm-hmm. We think you're a genius. We love your heart. Stand strong, my friend. Even if the likes of the a-hole Jimmy Kimmel tries to make you look like a fool, like we see truth.
Yeah.
So we started watching that, and I got so irritated that it's permissible for someone like Jimmy Kimmel to attack
Yeah.
Mike Lindell for what he's doing. So at any rate, I was like, you know what? I don't want to even put this in my mind. So here's what happens when you join defendchiropractic.org. On Monday mornings, you're greeted with Bharon given truth. And truth that you can go and find out the basis of. It's not just like, oh, here's some idea, let's grab that. Like, here's a fear, let's grab that and let's perpetuate that. So the best way to approach your lawyer, I mean, your employer, is like, know the truth. Number one, I would encourage you to even study Title VII and really look at the religious exemption. And you can find all of that at defendchiropractic.org. You don't have to be a chiropractor to know your rights, and you're welcome to piggyback off of the stance that we're taking as your own stance, because it's not just for chiropractors. It's human rights. It's freedom that we have been given by our forefathers as American citizens, that now we're also showing others throughout the world of like, hey, let's all unify under this concept that we've been operating under called freedom.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's essentially it. Depending on the state that you're in, because of the federal laws, you need to use the religious exemption path right now. Most states, like I said, Rhode Island's the only one, in Maine that I know of, that are not accepting religious exemptions. And we're working on that. So yeah, the best thing to do with your employer, don't even ask, just find a good religious exemption form that's defendable. I don't recommend you use the ones that the states are giving out, or even the ones that employers give out, because they're kind of set to be denied because of the terminology they're using. So for example, in Oregon, the Department of Health put out one called an exclusion, not an exemption. Well, there is no case law anywhere in the world that talks about exclusions.
Oh, those rats.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was intentional or not, and maybe it still is defendable, but I don't trust anybody right now. And so I had our attorneys actually draft, exemption forms that we know are defendable, that have a language that we can call on if we need to defend it. So just be careful. Just know that there is a force out there that yeah, we accept religious exemption, fill out this form. Oh, sorry, the form doesn't meet the criteria. We're rejecting your exemption, and making you feel, stranded and alone. So make sure you get a good form, fill it out right, be very detailed and honest about what your strongly held belief is and why. If you are a Christian, one of the strongest ones we're using is the fact that it's fetal tissue, that abortion, if you're very adamant about that, that's working a lot. I don't want you to lie. I don't want you to put anything in there that isn't true. But if that is a thing for you, that is a strong argument that a lot of employers are starting to accept, and they have to accept it. So, just be intelligent about that and make sure that you get a form, but move forward in confidence and say, here's my exemption form. Don't say, oh, I hope you accept it, or, oh my gosh, just like, no, here's my form. I expect you. If you don't accept it, you can expect to hear from my attorney, and just have that, that attitude. And it really does go a lot further. We got to call their bluff to a certain degree. They're going to make an example out of some people, but they can't stop us all, man. It's the ants and the grasshopper theory. We outnumber them dramatically. This is why we're having a mass exodus of employees leaving employers this week, because they're not going to do it. And literally in certain states, they're going to shut down the hospital systems. Yeah. I mean, they're already planning to call the National Guard in to come and fill the voids that are going to be leaving, of employees leaving. It's going to be a military state in certain states, because people are rising up and they are not going to take it.
Which, you know what, can we flip the narrative that it's not we, the unvaccinated, that are causing this problem?
Exactly.
It's the federal government and the state and the lower courts that refuse to look at the law. The law gives us the right to choose and to have a religious exemption. So, we're the ones getting blamed for, like the person that gets denied at the hospital because we have so many COVID patients. Like, hey, if we would have looked at this way differently.
Well, it's so funny. On that point, just to add another exposing, they say that all the hospitals are over capacity. They're over capacity not because there's no beds left, but because they don't have enough employees. Exactly. That's why they're over. I mean, it's been exposed. It's not because, and the hospitals are not full of unvaccinated. They're full of vaccinated people. Like, that's all propaganda. It's not true. But it's true that hospitals are overrun. But we think when they're overrun, there are patients in the hallways, there are patients in the parking lot. No, they're overrun because there's a certain number of beds that they can occupy depending on the number of personnel they have on staff. And because they keep mandating all of this garbage, people are leaving, they have a shortage of staff. So that means they have a shortage of beds. So it's all propaganda. And that's been proven over and over and over again. And it's not the unvaccinated that are sick. It's the vaccinated that are sick.
Right.
And if you really want to get fired up and get excited, go to Del Bigtree's Highwire. Man, I listen to that every Thursday and he just pumps me up, and they are the best journalists I have ever seen. And I listen, I learn a lot from them. We work with them. He has ICANN, which is the informed consent organization. I've been a part of that forever. They were fighting the child vaccination issues for years. So they're just really primed for this. And so we partner with them on a number of things. And I just tell you, they do the best journalism I've ever seen on this issue. But yeah, it's all propaganda. Here's the bottom line. I know we're going on 53 minutes here, which is a Facebook crime to be that long. No one's attention span on Facebook goes this long, but
that's not really true. Like, thanks for all of you that are still
that's
with
awesome.
us, and kudos to you too, Bharon. Thank you.
well, it's good. But I just, at the end of the day, Doc Eaton said it already, that this is about making sure you don't feel alone. It's about letting you know that there are good people doing good work. Doesn't mean you have to do the work, but you got to get plugged in with the work that's being done. So yes, we need the funds. I would love for you to go to our site. I would love for you to contribute, but I want you coming to our site more importantly, because I want you to be plugged in and connected to a group of people. Feel like you have a place that you can send an email and be like, dude, I don't know what to do. I will reply. I reply to all emails. So I want you to feel a part of something. Our profession loves to be segmented. It loves to feel isolated. We love to feel like we're alone. It's not, we can't do that in this. We have to come together. So the biggest thing that I want to give you is hope. I want to give you a place to call home. I want to give you a place to plug in that isn't about all of the normal rhetoric within our profession. This is about choice. It's about freedom. It's about empowering chiropractors. It's about ensuring that our profession continues to grow, because we've always been in a position of truth. We've just never come together to make sure that we're pushing that truth forward. And that's exactly what we're going to do at One Chiropractic with the Defense Council.
One last thing that I want to offer to all of you to perhaps help someone else see truth. So when both of my children were born in the hospital, and obviously we're not vaccinated. And one of the things that I did was I had tons of research stapled together that when a healthcare person came into my room, I could be like, no, I'm not vaccinating, and here's why. And everything was highlighted and whatnot. And I did have one nurse that said to me, I really appreciate that. Like, I don't know where to turn to actually find this information. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciated, that you gave me basically your stance. And so you never know when you turn in that religious exemption form, maybe somebody who looks at it, maybe there's a crack of like doubt in their mind, and they're just looking. And maybe the fact that you spent some time doing some research, which please do the reading and look and see the connection between vaccines and abortion. Please look at that. And then if you're going to read it anyway, like screenshot it, print it. Like if you need the money to cover the printing costs, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to cover your printing costs in order to give you hope and the person that you give that religious exemption. Like, just think if every single person who turned in a religious exemption form also gave 10 sources of truth concerning their decision on their religious exemption. Like, we could radically change how things are moving forward if we did that. And it doesn't take any more time.
That's right. That's awesome advice.
Awesome. Hey, thanks to all of you. God bless you today. Please be praying for those in Rhode Island who are really feeling alone. And if you would, share this in any way that you can. Take your link, like I said, put it in your email, put it in your text, put it on other social media platforms, through your Facebook private messenger. Like, If you'd be so gutsy as to even just share it to your page, share it in the pages that you belong to, right? Like where they're already talking about this, please just take it and share it there. It is always shareable. And please join us at defendchiropractic.org. We greatly appreciate all that you're doing in your practice, or if you're not a chiropractor, what you're doing to defend freedom. That's what this issue is defending our right to choose. So Bharon, God bless you. Thank you, my friend. Continue to fight the good fight. And any last minute words you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, thank you. Obviously, I appreciate you sharing this message with your tribe, and yeah, you know, I feel rejuvenated. I feel vigor. I feel purpose. We're building a team. We're making strides. So yeah, just know that we're fighting and we're not going to stop. So the profession of chiropractic will prevail. We will get stronger. We will gain a better threshold, and we're going to do it together. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. See ya.